In the absolute silence of Sector 4, the clicking started. 9 distinct sets of chitinous feet scraped against the obsidian floor, a rhythmic, predatory countdown. Kara's hand hovered over her chest rig, her breathing the only thing louder than the approaching doom. Eyes shut, she whispered, her voice a serrated blade in the dark. Close them now, or you'll never see again. I didn't understand the warning, but the way her shadow tightened against the trench wall told me she wasn't guessing. I should have listened to the sudden, sharp edge in her voice. If you had been standing there in that crushing silence, would you have trusted a species that carries miniature stars in their pockets? That same metallic taste of recycled oxygen. It had first surfaced 6 hours earlier, when the search and rescue team touched down on the lightless crust of the Nicton homeworld, 3 light-years from the nearest sun. Professional scouts like me don't fear the dark. We live in the gaps between photons. As a Nicton, my world is composed of nuances of gray and the subtle heat signatures of tectonic shifts. To me, the shadow trench was a familiar office, a jagged corridor of silence where the only thing that mattered was the next thermal pocket or the faint vibration of a distant rockfall. We were the masters of the unlit places. Our eyes, vast and ink-black, were biological masterpieces designed to capture a single, stray photon from a billion miles away. Light was our currency, and we were the wealthiest beings in the galaxy, provided the currency remained scarce. Lieutenant Kara Bishop did not fit into this economy of shadows. She moved with a strange, calculated friction. Every step she took in her heavy tread boots sent micro-vibrations through the obsidian floor, like a hammer striking a glass bell. I watched her through my primary optic set, noticing the way her heat signature pulsed in the cold air. She was a furnace in a refrigerator. Beneath the silicon ribs of the shadow trench, the air didn't just feel cold, it felt heavy. It was thick with silicate dust that tasted like old bone. Kara had been breathing it for hours without complaint, though I could smell the bitter, oily scent of stale coffee whenever she exhaled. It was a lingering human artifact, a chemical ghost that didn't belong in the pristine, frozen depths of the trench. "Status, Zeph?" she asked. A sharp scream tore through the quiet. Kara had reached for a pouch on her tactical vest, the sound of the Velcro strap being peeled back feeling like a physical assault on my auditory slits. To her, it was a mundane adjustment. To me, it was a declaration of presence that could be heard for kilometers. I checked the long-range thermal scanners mounted to my wrist. The readout showed a flat, frozen landscape of zero activity. It was a perfect, clean slate. But my secondary optics, the ones tuned to the subtle displacement of cold air, caught a ripple. A localized swirl of pressure that shouldn't have been there. Which meant the thermal sensors were lying. "We aren't alone, Lieutenant," I signaled, my chromatophores flashing a muted, cautious amber. "Something is masking its heat signature. Multiple targets. Moving in a flanking pattern." She didn't panic. Humans rarely do when they should. Instead, she reached up and adjusted the dark, tinted aviators that sat perched on the bridge of her nose. I had found them ridiculous when we first met. Why would a search and rescue specialist wear light-dimming filters in a world where we were starving for even a glimmer of radiance? It was like bringing an umbrella to a desert. "The 9, I whispered, the name tasting like ash. "The warlords of the lower trench. They don't take prisoners, Kara. They dismantle them." The Nicton warlords were legends of biological cruelty. They had evolved to hunt in the absolute zero-light zones, using ultrasonic location so precise they could map the valves of a heart from 50 meters away. They didn't need to see us to kill us. But more importantly, they were the ultimate gatekeepers of the dark. To them, we were intruders in a temple of silence. Kara checked the action on her sidearm, a heavy, mechanical sound that echoed off the high walls. "How many?" 9 heat masks. "Closing from the north and southwest," I replied. My optic nerves were already beginning to ache from the strain of searching for a target that refused to be seen. My pupils were dilated to their maximum capacity, huge black orbs that occupied nearly my entire face, straining to find a single spark of information in the void. She didn't look at me. She looked into the dark, her posture shifting into something predatory. "Zeph, tell the others to anchor. I want everyone's back against the obsidian. Now." I relayed the order to the rest of the squad, 3 other Nictan scouts and a Trachian engineer. We huddled against the freezing stone, our large eyes darting, searching for the shimmer of a cloaking field or the glint of a blade. The clicking grew louder. It was a wet, rhythmic sound now, the noise of chitinous joints unfolding. The warlords were close. I could feel the displacement of their bodies in the air, a heavy, suffocating pressure. They were circling us, savoring the fear that radiated off our skin like heat. To them, we were nothing more than soft, photon-dependent meat. "Kara," I hissed, my internal pressure rising. "We can't win this in the dark. They own this space." "They own the dark," she corrected softly, her fingers tracing the cap of a cylinder on her vest. "But they don't own the sun." I didn't understand what she meant. The sun was millions of miles away, a distant memory of warmth. Here, in the heart of Sector 4, there was only the cold and the 9. The clicking stopped. The clicking had been a distraction. The real threat was the sudden, absolute cessation of movement. 9 shadows, invisible even to my hyperdilated optics, were now within striking distance. I could feel the cold radiating from Kara's skin, but her hands were steady as she gripped the small, ribbed cylinder. It was just a tactical tool to her, a standard piece of Earth rescue gear made of plastic and magnesium, yet in this environment, it felt like she was holding a detonator for a tectonic bomb. I watched her thumb find the ignition tab. Not yet. She was waiting for the exact moment the warlords committed to their final lunge, measuring the distance with a sensory precision that didn't require photon capture. "On my mark," she whispered. Her fingers brushed against the frame of her sunglasses, the tiny metal hinge giving off a dry, microscopic click that sounded like a bone snapping in my oversensitive ears. This was her second mundane anchor, a piece of dark glass that was about to become the most valuable resource in the sector. The air pressure shifted violently. 9 bodies, each the size of a mountain strider, launched from the obsidian walls simultaneously. They were silent, efficient, and utterly certain of their victory. The dark died. Kara ripped the cap off the cylinder and struck the igniter with a violent, practiced motion. And then, the return to the moment I will never forget. A supernova erupted in the center of the trench. To a human, a magnesium rescue flare is a bright, flickering beacon meant to signal a helicopter across a foggy forest. To a Nictan, whose eyes are biological sponges for light, 50,000 lumens is not a signal. It is a war crime. The 50,000 lumens didn't just illuminate the trench, they tore through the delicate, hypersensitive architecture of our optic nerves with the force of a physical impact, turning the liquid crystal receptors of my teammates and the screaming warlords alike into a boiling, white static that erased every concept of shadow, safety, and identity in a single, agonizing pulse of artificial sun. I collapsed, my secondary heart seizing. Around me, the legendary warlords of the lower trench were no longer predators. They were heaps of twitching chitin, their massive, dilated pupils literally scorched by the sudden influx of photons. They wailed, a sound like grinding metal, begging for a darkness that no longer existed. Biologically, we were defenseless. Nictan eyes lacked the pupillary light reflex. Our irises are fixed wide, designed to never waste a single grain of light because our star is a dying ember. We have no gate to shut out the world. But Kara did. As the magnesium burned with a terrifying, rhythmic hiss, I caught a glimpse of her through the haze of my own failing vision. She stood perfectly still in the center of the white inferno. Her human eyes had already performed a miracle of evolution, her pupils constricting to pinpricks in less than a tenth of a second, while the dark tint of her aviators filtered the remaining lethality. She looked directly at the miniature sun she had summoned, her expression as calm as if she were reading a data slate in a library. "Anybody need a tan?" she asked, her voice flat and unimpressed by the carnage of light. The warlords, once the terrors of the sector, scrambled backward into the jagged rocks, their optic nerves permanently fused. They didn't just surrender, they fled from the mere concept of her presence. The flare began to settle, the violent white primary burn fading into a thick, pulsing crimson. The magnesium was spent, leaving only a scorched, hollowed-out casing that smoked in the freezing air. Kara reached down and picked it up, the metal still glowing a dull, angry red. She led us out of the trench then, the red light casting long, distorted shadows that felt like a mockery of our former mastery. We reached the extraction point in silence. The warlords would never hunt again, and the shadow trench was no longer a temple of the unlit. We had been rescued by a goddess of fire who didn't even realize she had committed a massacre. In my hand, I gripped the cooled metal of the flare casing, a treaty token from a world where light is a gift rather than a blade. I looked back at the yawning mouth of the trench, now forever haunted by the memory of the day the sun came to visit. We ruled the dark until the human brought the sun.